All right. So this is a week where things get a little personal. Um, so last week we talked a little bit about speed and thrash metal, how that was my introduction to harder stuff through one of my friends. And I really enjoyed listening to that. But as I said, that was a slippery slope, so I didn't stay there for too long. But this path eventually took me to other more extreme forms of metal. And what happened is, as I obviously was looking for more metal interested people in my circles, I eventually started to hang out with this guy. I can't even remember how it happened. It was another friend from school who I would have never, ever suspected he was into metal at all. Because he didn't look the type. Like, not in a million years. And he was very quiet. Didn't talk to anyone. Maybe a couple of people, but he was not really like, the friendly type of person in school. He was really in his corner over there. So I think that kind of tells you he really fitted into the extreme metal clique a little bit. So I can't remember how we became closer or how I started to talk to him. We shared some classes together, so it must have been through that, doing homework in teams or whatever. But eventually he told me like, oh, you listen to metal, huh? Oh, that stuff, huh? Ah, okay. Let me show you where it gets really good. And he invited me to go to his house one day to just listen to music. He had an insane record collection. At least from what I was used to back then. Today is different, but back then it was still insane. He must have had hundreds of records, and he actually bought records. Well, I did too. Most people did back then. We had just records or tapes. That was it. So, but he had like a crazy record collection. I had never seen so many records in a single bedroom in my life ever. I was not even with my friends' parents, who they had years to amass records. Anyway, so we go to his place and he starts to play to me these bands, and I was just like, what the hell is that? I was completely unfamiliar with what he was playing to me. I mean, there was no more singing at all. Just basically grunting and growling and screaming and shrieking. You could not make up the words. And if I thought that speed and thrash metal were fast, that was nothing. That was like going on a bicycle compared to what he was playing to me. I didn't know what to think. So he said, don't worry, I'll copy some of these albums on tapes and bring them to school, and you can have them. So he made some tapes for me, and I took them back home and I started to listen to that. And I really got into it. And this was a period in my life where I was going through quite a few issues, personal issues. So darker things were pulling me into their midst. And this music just resonated with who I was back at the time. So obviously, I started to go once a week to his place with tapes. And I was like, can we record some more? And he would be like, fine, no worries. And so I did hang out with him a lot. And I was listening to this stuff non-stop. So I have some of those tapes over here. because I don't have a lot of CDs of extreme metal bands. I do have some that I'll show you in a minute, but this is more newer things, more contemporary bands, because I obviously bought these CDs in the last few years. But I want to go through the stuff that I was listening to in high school, so you can see what it was. So I found some of in my little box of tapes that survived up to today. So I have this tape of a band called DRI. DRI stands for, if I remember correctly, it was Dirty Rotten Imbeciles, something like that. So yeah, DRI. Then here we have Carnivore. I have to listen to all this stuff again. I have a tape player. At some point, I tried to make a mission of converting all these tapes back to MP3, because now that's everything is digital. So, but it takes a while. I mean, you have to play the tape in real time and record a single audio file per each side of the tape. And then I had to go back and edit that audio file into single files for each song and then enter the metadata. And then a lot of these tapes, I mean, I don't want to tell you how many decades I've had them for, but they've obviously suffered the passage of time a little bit. So the audio quality is not the best. So what I've started to do though is I try to find some of these bands in places where I can buy the music, because I can just add them in Spotify or whatever, but I want to buy the music so that the band can have my $5 or whatever it's gonna get them. So I did manage to find some in Bandcamp and I bought the albums. Some others don't exist anymore, so tough cookie. But anyway, I'm trying to do my best to get these bands back into my music library. Anyway, so there we go, Carnivore. Then we have here Metallica and Slayer, which we talked about last week. Then one of my most favorite bands that this guy introduced me to, he was a big fan too, and I loved them, Death. That band is amazing. I also have in this tape Death Row and Slaughter. Not Slaughter, the hard rock band. There's a hard rock band called Slaughter. No, this is a death metal band, Slaughter. Then we have another one of my most favorites. I bought this album on Bandcamp and I love it. It's Numbskull. They only have one album. That's it. That's all the band managed to do. It's called Ritually Abused. I love it. It's so... Sometimes these bands can sound... It starts to veer into like cartoonish world because of how outside of what you usually listen to they are. But anyway, I love this band, Numbskull. Then I have here a compilation of death metal bands called Complete Death 2. Then I have Complete Death 1, another band called Rigor Mortis. Then another one called Onslaught. Then we have another one that I really like. These two I really like, Death Angel and Necronomicon. Yes, good stuff. Then we have, I remember I really like these two also, Holy Terror and Sacrifice. Nice bands. Then we have another compilation album, Speed Kills, and then another Death album. Oh, Death was so good, man. Then we have Possessed and Creator. Creator I really enjoyed a lot too. Then we have Pestilence and Carcass. Intense Mutilation and Annihilator. And that's what I have for today. And it's funny because, I mean, I'm going through all of them very quickly, but I must have been listening to this for at least a couple of years. Like like being really into it and almost nothing else. Almost, because we'll go into some other things later. But I was really into this phase for a while. But eventually, I guess I changed, as a person. Maybe my own personal demons started to like lose power or whatever, because I started to find myself listening to it less and less. And the stop sign for me came when I went with my friend. Well, actually, he would lend me sometimes his albums. I was very careful with them, and I would tape them at home. And there was this one that, as I was taping it, because I was listening to it obviously at the same time, I finished taping it and I was like, no, that's it. I'm off the train. That was it for me. And it was Carcass. Curiously, I found that way too intense for some reason, and I was like, yeah, I'm done. I mean, I still enjoyed eventually listening to some of the other bands, but to be very honest, I stayed off extreme metal for a very long time. I just came back to other things. Still rock, still metal, but not this anymore. And I stayed off that for many, many years. Until recently. Let me tell you about that next week. So stay tuned. Part 2 coming up. Don't go anywhere. Bye.